everyone, welcome to this fantastic interview episode of the Electronic Cafe. Mark and I just spent quite some time with the fabulous Ronan Harris from VNV Nation talking about his new album Construct, which is a fantastic piece of work. Absolute delight for us. So let's just show you our conversation with the fantastic Ronan Harris from VNV Nation.
And then, like, starting off with that, I drink in moderation, cutting to the next edit of, like, when I pulled myself out of the dumpster 3 days later. So London was the bigger influence. Doesn't mean that Hamburg wasn't. I've been living here now. I left London in 2000. I was in Canada for 4 years, came back to London. I left Hamburg in 2001, June 2001, and left London and moved to Hamburg. Been here ever since. So it's 24 years. I guess the taste in music and your access to different genres is very limited here. It's very different than England is Britain as a whole.
Yeah.
You can include Ireland in that. Just the love of music and the love of creation is something so unique to those islands, that mostly to the UK. It can't be understated. I watched, we use VPN to access BBC iPlayer, right? And I like putting on the Beeb every now and again. And we were watching Later with Jules Holland. And I had a bunch of friends over, and I said, "Here, watch a music show from England. People over here will not understand what's happening." And I said, "You can take a show like The Tube in the early 80s, which was so instrumental in shaping soul. We got to see the band Hardcore on stage with all their fab synths. Depeche Mode even did a show on it, I think it was when they did Some Great Reward. You know, there was just this diversity of alternative music from so many backgrounds, and it's all cross-pollinating. Now, we're watching the Later with Jules Holland. I said, here's a room, there's 6 different artists, all in different corners. And whether you like the style of music or not, everyone's really passionate and emotional. They're doing their own thing. Show me a show here where you can even see anything like that. Show me a show anywhere in the world where you'll see that amount of different, like, diverse artists. That's the thing. It doesn't matter what you're making. The passion and the drive to create something. Poverty even. Like, you think Sheffield, Manchester, pound for pound, the bands that they produced. And the influences. I mean, how many people heard the Buzzcocks and said, how can I do that with synths? How many people heard other bands and thought, how do I do electronics with guitar? And everyone's just influencing each other, and it just creates genres that no other country has ever done. So yeah, needless to say, I get my inspirations from outside. Germany's brilliant when it comes to electronic music. I don't tend to listen to what had evolved long after I'd gone through my heyday. So they've got this thing over here called the dark scene, and that embodies everything from, like, synth-pop into EBM, into kind of goth music, into all this stuff. And that's what latched onto us in Germany. And it's a very broad scene with many different genres. I don't necessarily feel I totally belong to that, because I obviously had so many incarnations before that. I was the guy listening to 23 Skidoo in the early 80s, and people going, what in the name of God are you listening to? And it's just weird loops. Listening to La Dusseldorf, just picking up weird records. And that's the era that I got. That's the founding era for me. It could be listening to Psychedelic Furs one day, and I used to go into a record shop in Dublin, where that's how I heard about Pt.2 for the first time. And one of the guys at the who worked there, he knew that I liked this kind of stuff, and he would just play me records.
Nice.
Hey, what do you think of this? And I'd heard Pt.2's first album, like years before. Someone gave it to me on a cassette or a couple of tracks from it in a mixtape. That was the other way of learning about music. And you connected with it because you felt the rarity of it. And I know you're asking a question like, where was I influenced the most? Sorry if I go into just how I am. I just go down roads, but those were my founding years. It was like listening to the music of the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, obviously, seeing the evolution of music, the creativity that had happened, and turn it into useless, silly pop. But as a reaction to that, this huge, vast underground of music, bands popping up from all over who probably like existed for a year.
Yeah.
You remember their tracks. I got a flexi disc once of it might have been an electronic music maker. They used to put out a cassette with their stuff. And I learned about so many bands and even people making music at home. It was hobbyists in a shed with a bunch of synths making music. And you're thinking, this is brilliant. I want to do that.
Additionally to your actual music, though, I mean, me and Mark were in bands and I wrote a load of lyrics. But your lyrics, for me, or for us, I think are a real standard. They're really deep and you really connect with them. Are you constantly carrying a notepad around you to capture that stuff? Or did you just sit there and go, right, I'm just going to write a song? I mean, I know you're a very talented man, but...
I wouldn't say that. I would still say I'm a student in the hall of music. In the pantheon of music, I can see my shortcomings, but then shortcomings are actually what create a sound. If you know that the less you got, the more you make of it and what have you. But when it comes to lyrics... a lot of my melodies, or a lot of melodies that have become songs, or even the ideas for songs, pop into my head when I'm not trying. So the best time to be creative, I always say, is not to be creative, it's to be bored. We learn that today because of our obsession with, social media and having the phone in front of our faces the whole time. I think that's why we live in such a non-creative time, where being derivative is seen as being creative, which is quite sad. Lyrics will pop into my head. I mean, the lyrics to Kingdom from the album Empires came to me when I was walking through Soho in London, and it's just playing over in my head. It's if you've heard a song on the radio and you've got an earworm. Did we ever have a word for earworm before the Germans gave us the term earworm?
I don't know.
I don't remember ever. There was no notion of ever having a word. But anyway, the lyrics pop into my head, bits of lyrics and the rest of the song. I know what I want to sing about and the rest of the song will form around it. Sometimes it's very a rhythmic concoction. Sometimes I've got a melody in my head and I'm singing along to it, because if you hear a song and you've only heard it once, but it got you, but you don't know the lyrics, you'll make them up as you walk around with your earworm, right? It's a little bit like that. And I've kind of just tried to describe it to people as if I were getting the songs through a membrane, like between two universes. A lot of artists describe it as if someone is passing the music to you and transmitting it into your head. I get ideas for sounds or weird things. So what I do, I used to have a short form where I'd write down on pieces of paper. I mean, countless pieces of paper, where I'd have to write down a short form, because sometimes a whole song would come into my head, sound, everything, production, the works. And you've only got it for about 30 seconds before someone interrupts you and it's gone. So I've got to write it down as quickly as I can. Now I do musical notes. I've got a synth on my phone, and I'm going to show you this. So it's a synth called Poison, right?
Yeah. Wow.
And I would sit there and, you won't hear it because it's the volume's all turned down. But if I then show you.
Wow, are they all ideas that are stored in your phone?
They're all videos I've recorded of me with my fingers playing a phone. And I'm just constantly writing melodies and they don't all kind of gel into songs, but sometimes they just all come together. So there's a wealth of melodies, there's a wealth of all kinds of things. And then sometimes I'll just be sitting with, there's a track on Destruct that I wrote one morning when I woke up. It's the times when you're not trying are the times when the best results come. You're just mucking about with a synth and suddenly a melody comes.
I've got my own one as well.
Hey, nice.
To rise above and overcome, to show the measure of your person and prove to you that you weren't wrong. If you feel there's nothing more, life has little else to give, nothing to dream or wish or hope for, then I ask you, think again.
It's a synth. I mean, look, it's just for making melodies.
Yeah. I mean, this one's got arpeggiators on it. You can see it flicking around.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like, it's got some nice sounds on it. But
you can write, that's the thing. It's the basicness of only having something very limited. You end up...
It's a notepad, isn't it? You've got a notepad on your phone, so...
I'm feeling very technically limited here.
I've used it on every single album since I got it, because I can't make those sounds with anything else. And it sounds vibey in its own way.
So, Ronan, we saw you... We mentioned earlier, we saw you in London when you played the Electric Ballroom, which was fantastic, absolutely rammed. And supporting you that night was Tiny Magnetic Pets.
Yes.
Who are another great band we love. Do you get to listen to much new music? I mean, is there anything that you're really floating your boat at the moment?
I listen to genres that people would be very surprised by. While I do listen to a lot of electronic music and put on radio shows, and I like it like that because someone else is curating the mix. And if I hear a track, I'll Shazam it. I do get to hear a lot of new bands. It's rare that I get excited by things within a genre that I kind of feel I've heard so many times.
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything's derivative in that sense, but as I've gotten older, I still listen to I love what goes on in underground dance music because it is incredibly innovative in how they process sounds. Also, their production rules, if you want to call it that, are a must for anybody trying to do electronic music. Even if you're not making that style of music, they've got it worked out to a fine art. How you run bass drums, how you layer everything, and how you make it so that everything sounds clear and right and it's sitting in its right space. But I listen to, one day I could listen to Manchester Orchestra because of incredible songwriting.
Yeah.
A Black Mile of the Sun is an astonishing album. And there's a lot of weird electronics on that. Or I listen to M83. They're just people who write music that gets me, no matter what the style of music is. Or I listen to organic, kind of this new classical, I guess it got called, the erased tape sort of like stable of music. I listen to a lot of that because it puts me in spaces where that's where I connect with myself the best. I listen to old music. I listen to new stuff. I listen to weird stuff. I have anybody I meet who's into a style of music that I've never had any kind of ingress into. I'll say, give me a list of artists. Going back to the UK diversity in music, there's somebody we work with a lot now who, when we did the UK shows, when we were driving around in a couple of vans, we didn't have any production gear with us. We flew in, and it was right after the pandemic. So anything we had on stage, we had to rent in. And it was a very kind of like seat of our pants kind of tour. And we needed somebody to do merchandise. And through a contact, we were connected with somebody who lives in Yorkshire, who ended up becoming one of my best friends. And within 30 seconds of meeting her, I was like, so you're driving the truck or the small box truck that's going to be transporting all the luggage and gear. I'll leave all the Germans sitting in the other car. I'm sitting with you. You and I are just going to talk the hind legs off a donkey. And she put on her Spotify playlist. And I swear to you, I came away from 5 days with about 40 artists. I'd never heard any of this. That's how I like to get exposed to music. Don't care what it is. In the same way, I still make electronic music, but the influences will come from a very diverse range of other styles of music. I mean, I've met metal bands who said, how do you write your melodies? And I go, what? Metal bands are famous for their melodies. I mean, isn't that your forte? Well, we connect. It's bizarre. Like the fan base, if I want to call it that, for VNV is so. I mean, we went to on the last US tour. There was one gig where there were two guys wearing shirt, like standing in different parts of the audience, wearing shirts with, idols. And I'm like, how do you connect that with what I'm doing? That is brilliant. I do listen to a lot of orchestral music. I listen to a lot of classical, avant-garde, the different phases of the formal music world, because I'm learning from it. Anything that just inspires me and hits a reaction deep inside me. And I am an emotional person, but I've kind of learned over decades to control that, because I was always a logical person, which I guess is what attracted me to synthesizers. And then there was this very emotional person, and there was two sides of my family fighting within me. We've made peace, and we're able to function perfectly now. But you've got me on an emotional moment because we're talking about topics that I adore. So
that is VNV Nation, though, isn't it? You got the technical side. You got the technical side and of the synthesizers, and you got the emotional side, which is your lyrics, which complement each other perfectly. So
yeah.
have you seen the furore that's going on about, I'm not trying to do an advert for this, but it's happening anyway, so I can just mention it, of people trying to work out the album cover from Construct?
I haven't seen any of the forums or discussions about it, but I think I've read that the concept of the sleeve, when the cutouts of the letters on the sleeve. All
right, so when I first published the cover, people thought, what is this? Are these bubbles? Or is basically we had to do a 3D mock-up. And if I look at it, I go, well, that's kind of what the cover looks like. But to anybody just looking at a flat image, it doesn't do it justice. So there's a grid of characters on the inner booklet, and on the main on the cover, you've got a bunch of holes cut out on it, die cut. And when you slide the booklet in, it basically says VNV Nation and then Construct, and there you go. That got a lot of people thinking, is there something more to this? And a lot of them have been kind of missing the obvious that yes, there is something in it. And so I've been having fun watching. I go back every now and again. I don't have a lot of time for the internet other than reading up on what's going on in the world, or reading up on forums or groups that I like. I've got a lot of other interests, vintage cars, anything to do with a number of other hobbies and projects I've got. People have been trying to work out what this is all about. And I get a laugh out of going in and answering questions, because I don't want to answer the questions. But there's something in the album that I think only one person so far has actually posted something where I said, you're on the right track. And it's going to be a long play. And of course, everyone's trying to figure it out using AI, and AI is not going anywhere with it. But I got an email from a guy in Sweden who doesn't understand, he doesn't listen to music, doesn't really get modern music. But he said, yeah, somebody sent this to me and asked me what I think of it, and sent me a whole list of theories. And I said, do you want me to answer? I can't. The whole point is, I want you to work together and figure it out, because there's something in these albums that it's an old part of my career. And I kind of thought that would be an interesting layer in this and have some fun with it. I went to the packaging company, the company who distributes my music, both digitally and physically. And I went in there and I said, right, show us all the covers so I get some ideas, some sort of like, I'll go away and it'll all stew over in my head, and I'll come up with a cover idea, cover concept. And they showed me one 12-inch by this one guy with a very, very simple die cut in it. And I went, I've got it. Those are the moments of inspiration. They're the things that I love. And I had the whole cover in my head, and then I had to go away and sheets of paper later trying to work out how I would do this, because it's not as straightforward as you think, but it's also very straightforward. And I think when maybe what I think is straightforward isn't what other people, people are going to hate me after all this, but it is a bit of fun. I didn't want to make this into an alternate reality game. I could have, but that would have taken years of planning. For what? For a bit of fun. It's just really simple. It's kind of like it's part of my personality, part of my career, my past, things that I was fascinated by as a kid, all kinds of puzzles. And I wanted that to play a part in this.
Beneath the metal towers, machines of a radiant design, bear silent witness to a golden age. Glowing wireless
you know why there's clear vinyl, right? Or why there's colored vinyl. Ultravox, back in their day, I think when, what's his name was still with them? Yeah, John Fox. They were really into getting their records to be the highest quality. I read an interview with Warren Kahn. He was very, very, very sarcastic, brilliant. They wanted to go and find out, vinyl would be, there were a lot of errors that would happen. There were a lot of like fake press or bad pressings, and they would have to have them redone. And they were asking like, all right, how do we get this done so it's the best, ensuring the best quality? So they went down to the factory. I think they were with Chrysalis. They went down to the factory, went down to the pressing plants, and they said, right, show us the process. We just want to see how we can better this. And old vinyl records that were mispressings or whatever would all be thrown back in the vat, which would decrease the insurance of quality. So they went back up the chain, and then they found that vinyl was dyed black to look like shellac records, to look like 78s. But it's clear. And you imagine it's the late 70s and it's the era of we've come out of that late 60s Stanley Kubrick 2001 thing and start to see everything in the future is going to be made of plastic and, that kind of 70s dystopian world. Punk has really gone off on this. We've got the Tomorrow People on TV. Everything's kind of like plastic jumpsuits. And there's lots of crappy TV. And I honestly think that the future was designed that way because they were the cheapest materials available to the set designers. But anyway, and they must have just sat there and stared at each other and just went, clear vinyl. Can we press with clear vinyl? And they went, yeah, why would you want to? Because it's really cool. So they did it because it ensured the best quality and also looked really futuristic.
It does.
And then 2 weeks or a month later, everyone else is doing it. Not because of quality, because they thought, wow, that looks cool.
We love having this chat with you. We'll finish with a couple of quickies just to get into your mind.
Yes.
I'll start. One album, what would be your Desert Island disc?
Judging by what you said, that's going to be really difficult because you've got.
I've always said it. It's funny. I had to think about it for a second, as if to go through the list of records, and I realized that I'd already answered that question. The Blue Nile, A Walk Across the Rooftops.
Oh, what an album.
I have bought that album 10 times because it always got borrowed, never given back. No album has been with me longer. I know that Irish TV had an alternative music show, or at least a music show, kind of like the John Peel kind of thing. And they played the Blue Nile's Stay, and that was it for me. It connected with me. My teenage years there was a lot to get through, or a lot to process, and a lot to pack away and just make peace with after my youth, or my childhood years and my teenage years. So I was like all teens were moody, and it was a perfect time for sentimental music. And, we loved a song that sounded like it had a deeper meaning. I guess a lot of us, that's why we like Nobody's Diary. These are the songs people gravitated towards because it felt like it had meaning. And when you're a teenager, you seek relevance and you look for meaning in things because you're just growing up without a manual. You're trying to find the sense to everything. You're filled with questions. So brilliant time to grow up would have been the early 80s, because, oh my God, we just allowed emotions to blast out. Punk had done that by basically saying we can sing about what it's like to live in a tower block with absolutely no opportunities. And absolutely brilliant. And suddenly it just opens the door to everyone being able to say what they want to say.
Great shout, mate, album-wise. I mean, what an album.
Been with me all my life. I mean, when I saw that he did an album, Peace at Last, I thought, oh, finally, well done, mate. That'd be my Desert Island album, because I'll not only be able to relive most of my life through it and be able to always have that if I'm on a desert island. There's so many brilliant sounds on it. They use such limited equipment to make it.
Yeah,
I get
that's very true.
The beauty of it. And then a song like Easter Parade is just stunning. I mean, in the kind of he couldn't. His voice cracked trying to hit notes. It sounded like pain, but yet that was perfect. It suited the music.
Yeah.
There are so many artists who couldn't sing brilliantly, but their style of voice matched the music they were making, and that's what made it.
Candy girls want candy boxes. She loves the music box forever. She's crying on my shoulder. Stay or stay.
Here's another one for you, Ronan. So, a table for 4 for Mr. Harris. 3 dinner guests you'd love to sit and have dinner with, dead or alive. Who would they be?
Tesla for sure. Marcus Aurelius, just because I want to go like, mate, seriously, were you really intense around people? I read meditation. We were gifted a library of Penguin books when we were kids, like when I was just a young teenager. So I was like wondering, okay, what the hell are all these books? And why are they Penguin classics? So I read Marcus Aurelius. Didn't make sense to me until I was older what Stoicism was about. So I would have to say Aurelius, just because I've got some questions and I need answered. And I kind of think that is the philosopher side. I'm trying to think who the third would be. Yeah, I would have to say Bowie. And I wasn't a Bowie fan. I'm going to say some heretical things. I saw Bowie on Top of the Pops doing... I don't know which incarnation of Spaceology it was. Going back to my mum with the ironing board. And I would just sit there watching all these artists, and for better or worse, whatever, some of them were great, some of them didn't really do anything for me. But he wore a crash helmet, he looked deathly pale and just looked alien. And I think it might have been the second release of it. Do you remember the Top of the Pops vinyl albums? Does anyone remember these?
I do. Well, they weren't the artists.
That's right. You get the instrumentals and they would sing them on top. So we had the one with Life on Mars on it. And that's when a lot of things gelled for me as far as sound. But I never really, because Bowie's sound changed, it didn't really fit for me. I wasn't old enough to understand what he represented. On TV when I was growing up, we had Welsh TV we could receive in Dublin. We had BBC from Northern Ireland, and we got to see a lot of TV shows like, you could watch Magpie in the 70s. You could watch all these kinds of weird things that to us were weird because we didn't have anything like it. And I got to see all these artists. And I mean, I got to see Mark Bolan, T-Rex. He did his show, Mark.
I love Mark Bolan.
And the Bay City Rollers had their own show.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
I was 6 years old watching this stuff, or 5 years old, just going, who are these?
That's brilliant, though. How brilliant. God. That's kind of one of the reasons me and Mark set this up, because we buy so much new music, and I know you hear a lot. But we thought, where can people hear this stuff? Where's the tubes or the old grey whistle tests? They've all gone. Because
when I grew up, Ireland loved blues, loved music with soul and what have you. So I got to, as well as like us having, Van Morrison and what have you, I got to hear Sly and the Family Stone. So like the first album has a little drum box on it, a little rhythm box. Wouldn't call it a drum box, but a rhythm box on it. And all these other artists, and listening to Otis Redding, and all those things kind of filter into your own list of music. Yeah. I listened to Billie Holiday, and I thought, what incredible emotion in a strange voice.
Yeah,
and it's just packed full of things that I wouldn't just listen to that music because of the style of that music. I'm listening to it because there's something deeply human. The tools we use, whether they be electronic or not. I mean, I have a palette, as evidenced by doing a song like Hymn or Nothing More. Do something that sounds orchestral.
Yeah.
I can do something that sounds like rock. That's my palette of choice. The studio is my instrument in that regard. So we grew up listening to such an array of music that nobody firewalled. Nobody said, you don't listen to this, you don't listen to that. I was as much buying weird electronic music from either America or obviously the UK, and from mainland Europe. Tons of bands doing really, really crazy things. As much as I was buying early hip hop. There was the electro albums, which were like groundbreaking, because here you hear an 808 being put through its paces. I mean, electronic music was unbridled. We were just into people doing creative things, and it was like an evolution of technology. And then suddenly people are using samplers and using them for good things and bad things. And I mean, we've kind of come to a point where it's like, well, what's next?
Images of the remote and never changing, grand designs, style and grace. And am I lost in thoughts on open seas? Let the currents carry me. If I could, would I remain another life or another dream?
Mate, I can't thank you enough for coming on. Album is just immense. We're going to be promoting the hell out of it anyway. Love to come and see you when you're playing in London.
Yeah.
I got a couple of questions for you.
Oh, go on then. He's turning the tables on the smart.
Desert Island Synth.
Oh,
A Jupiter 8.
Okay. I
Just-
wouldn't have expected that, but okay, yeah.
Just because 1980, 81, there used to be a music shop in Romford, close to where I lived, that had all the Roland synths in there. Strangely, it had a Jupiter 8 in there, which as kids you could go in there and just muck around on.
Was that Monkey Biz?
Monkey Business was opposite the studio where we used to rehearse. The Lower Wapping Concord was the studio opposite. Monkey Business, yeah, that's where I bought my first synth from. But it wasn't Monkey Business. It's brilliant, you know that.
I know that for a reason. Back in 1982, 83, I got Electronic Sound and Music Maker, or whatever it was called. I can't remember, but there were reviews of demos. And there was a demo reviewed, and they said, sounds like early Depeche Mode, which was a sound I happened to like. The guy was based in Basildon. There was a postal address. So I wrote him. And he's still one of my best mates.
wow.
He was the keyboard guy in Monkey Biz in the late 80s.
Great shop. They used to have a little room at the back, which was like sliding doors where you could actually go and...
With a recording studio. I can tell you, when I moved to London, I spent every weekend in Basildon. And I would, just because my mate lived there, and would go with him to the shop. And I spent the entirety of Saturday playing everything and going into the recording
Wow.
studio. If you knew which bands came in, I'm going to tell you a couple of historical things here, and recorded there, asked if they could record. I mean, Sean he lives in New Zealand now. He went on to a very illustrious career because a band came in. They started out making rave music and they wanted to buy a piece of gear to help make it. And then they started to build up a home studio, as all these bands did, but they didn't know how compressors worked or MIDI splitters and all these kinds of, everyone was making a device to solve a solution because it was a tough day trying to sync things, trying to sync all this different, gear together, and then getting MIDI CV interfaces and DCB, and how do I interface that with MIDI? And, they were fun days. We were all kind of like slapping our heads together, trying to solve things. Anyway, so after work, he would go off and help the band. And I was privy to that because there were a bunch of bands that were starting out, that were building up their own career. And they all went on to become, Essex, really, seriously, produced some insane bands. So that band, he then helped out, put their studio together, and he became great mates with them. And he became like an engineer, studio engineer, like as into how does all this stuff fit together? How does it work? Doing sounds. That band's The Prodigy.
I thought you were going to say that. Amazing. Yeah.
And Sean went off and became like the E-Magic Logic rep for, I think it was New Zealand and Australia. Yeah, man, I've got some stories about that place. Some incredible stories about that place. But I've met so many bands through it. And you're kind of, you're 22, 23. I was a late bloomer in that. VNV didn't kick in until, like, I guess, 95. I released the album of demos as an album, so to speak. And then it really wasn't until Praise the Fall and we had a bunch of gear at home. I'd used an ARP 2600 in Canada. Somebody loaned me one. All the gear got stolen, which was horrible. Broke my heart. Okay. I went to London, went into a music shop. They had a secondhand ARP 2600 selling for nothing. I still have it. It is raggedy, but it is the greatest synth I've ever owned. There's something about the Mark III that is just on another level. I've used it on almost every album. It's done some of the most important sequences, and it's something I play live. I'll quantize it after in case I'm hitting a bum note or whatever, or my timing's off, or I've had a heavy night the night before. That's like an organic instrument you connect with. It's something I dislike about plugins. Plugins to me are like painting your hallway through the letterbox. You using one finger with your arm tied behind your back and using one finger to change a control at a time.
You need knobs and sliders. I do anyway, just to rather than. I remember when the DX7 came out, and do you remember the controller? It's just ridiculous.
It was like a row of things.
It's a row of buttons and a little screen, and it wasn't tangible at all. It was horrible.
My thoughts race by like the scene outside through the windows of the train. I could cover my eyes but never hide from the promises I made. If I was a better man, or a poor man or a king, would I have the strength to start again?
Desert Island album, both of you.
So I've got two, but if you put a gun to my head, so the two are remaining Light Talking Heads and No Known Pleasures, Joy Division.
Ooh.
Yeah, and probably Joy Division.
Can you imagine the boat rolling up to rescue you, hearing that playing, drifting across the waters on the shore, like, ooh, somebody get
Turn around.
We need a therapist. The other Desert Island album is?
I would either have, and I'm not a Radiohead fan, but Radiohead The Benz album.
Oh,
I love that.
again, this is the thing. The guy goes off and starts using modular systems and just sounds that.
I think
It
that
just-
album is just stunning, like amazing. But I'm not a Radiohead fan at all. But that album would be there.
Yeah.
And then there's an album by a band called Organ Box,
Yes.
which is this one guy, and I saw a band called Orange in London that were the remnants of this band Organ Box, and I tracked it down. There was a small record label. I rang them up and I said to this guy, and he went, "Shit, you actually saw Orange?" And it's one guy, something Corcoran is Rick Corcoran, his name is, and he does all the instruments. It's kind of like a Beatlesque psychedelic electronic album, and it's just mind blowing. It's a fantastic album.
Can you see the lights as far as the eyes can see from this point above the world where mortals dare their destiny as it radiates? May I witness open-eyed, let me remain.
One of my network called me up and said, listen, there is a person in a studio in the UK. It's a project home studio, and they're selling everything. Maybe there's something you want. And I asked for photos. So he went in with a dodgy phone. We took some photos, and I was looking at it. There was a Dynacord delay, and I was like, I'll have that. And behind it, tucked behind all of this crap built up, was a Roland System 700, and I've never driven so fast. Owning it is like touching everything that inspired me. It's like owning a holy grail. It's astonishing. But the synths I love today, I mean, people are like, I guess there's a lot of geeks watching your show. The synth that actually blew my mind when I got it was the Sequential Pro 3. Got it home, put it in my second bedroom, just kind of my little office and all that kind of stuff. My missus was heading off to bed, and I said, I'm just going to run through some presets. I'll be there in about half an hour. Now, bloke's half an hour, right?
Yeah.
5 hours later, I had 2 banks of sounds. And I was like, what time is it? Like, huh? And I had to get up 3 hours later. And I didn't care. I was so happy. So the whole day I was thinking, I've got to go home and listen to those sounds. God, we sound like a bunch of old farts, don't we? Reminiscing. I remember in my day, I used to like slug my my Jupiter 6 on horseback, put it into the cart and through hail and snow, boring you chaps and keeping you from whatever else it is you have to do.
But you're only keeping me from a dental appointment, so
Keep talking.
every cloud has a silver lining. Ronan, this has been absolutely fascinating. Like literally, it's gone to places where I never thought it would go to. It's been an absolute thrill to speak to you. I mean, we've loved your work for a number of years. We're loving Construct. We can't wait to destruct.
The next one, I'm telling you, man, I have a bit of a sense of humor about this, and I'm telling people like it's going to be a really interesting reaction because it's very, very different. Very different. It's darker, more intense, and what have you. And the people who listen to VNV because they, let's say, like, you know, if we take Construct and they like songs like Save Me or Spaces Between or what have you, or Illusion or Nothing More or something like that, they're going to say, what? And it's
yeah, mate, honestly, it's been fascinating. Loved it. As Mark says, fans of your stuff for years. The new album is amazing. I'm telling everyone that's watching this episode, if you haven't got it, get it because you're missing out. It's a fantastic piece of work. And mate, we'd love to have a beer with you when you're over in the UK next.
I'll have a Theakston. I'll have a proper beer. Not
yeah, that'd be lovely. But mate, seriously, we'd love to have a beer when you're in London, seriously, and come and see you play. But we'll get this out. Hope you like the episode. I hope we do you proud. But mate, your album's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I look forward. Maybe we talk after Destruct comes out, and I'll stick to the point, and you can ask me questions about how it was made or something like that.
We'll definitely do that. We'll do that.
100%, mate. That's the date.
Be good. Have an amazing day. Good luck at the dentist there.
Cheers,
All right, bye.
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 Take care, mate.